The Red Raiders are looking to start Big 12 play 3-1 for the first time since 2018. Standing in their ways, the K-State Wildcats and Will Howard, who are set to invade the Jones on Saturday night. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here with the Back to 12 podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long. We're giving you the latest breaking news, game previews, 3 keys to the game, and so much more. So if you want to join one of the most interactive Big 12 communities and Texas Tech communities here on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. And before we even get into today's preview, I want to hear from you guys. Just gut reaction call right now. Leave your score prediction down on the pinned comment below for Kansas State at Texas Tech. It's going to be a good one. I really, really do believe that. A blackout at Jones AT&T Stadium. As we always say, crazy things happen at the Jones at night. All right, let's set the scene as we've already done a little bit. It will be at Jones AT&T Stadium in Lubbock, Texas, with kickoff set for 6 p.m. It'll be on FS1. Now, the history between Kansas State and Texas Tech is, well, not so great for Texas Tech. Let's just go ahead and say that. The Red Raiders enter Saturday's homecoming game, riding a 7-game losing streak to the Wildcats. Kansas State is 14-9 all-time in the series after winning 11 of the last 12 contests overall. Now, the Red Raiders have gone down to the wire against Kansas State in a ton of these games. Over the course of the 7-game losing streak, 6 of the losses have been by 10 points or less. Again, no moral victories on that front, but it is interesting. Now, some other things to know in this series right now. Kansas State currently ranks number 1 in the Big 12 in terms of rushing yards against as a defense. That's interesting because, well, Texas Tech is a predominantly rushing team now. Another fun fact, though, which I'm sure a lot of Texas Tech fans know, but it's still fun to put out there. The AD, Kirby Hocutt himself, is a Kansas State alum and was a 4-year letterman at linebacker at Kansas State, where he actually led the Big 8 conference in tackles as a junior back in 1993. All right, let's get into some of the players to watch in this one because, again, on the Texas Tech side, we kind of know who it is, right? And we'll start with the obvious ones. Behren Morton. I just mentioned a little earlier that Kansas State, they take away the run game from really any team that they played in the Big 12 so far, right? Can they do that against Texas Tech? And if they do, what does Behren Morton look like in an offense that has to change a little bit on the fly, at least presumably so, because you hear what Zach Hitley said in the presser on Monday talking about Kansas State where, hey, we want to give Taj Brooks the ball as much as possible, right? That's changed a little bit from his tone early on in the season, right? So if you have to get away from Taj Brooks, not completely, but as much as you would like to, I'm sure, in terms of giving him the football, what does Behren Morton look like with that AC joint injury, and can he attack that Kansas State secondary? Speaking of Taj Brooks, what does he look like in terms of the involvement if Kansas State does take him away from running the football, right? I'm sure he's going to be involved in the pass game, and you're still going to need to run the football a little bit just to keep that Kansas State defense honest. But what does it look like if he goes from averaging maybe 5.5 yards a carry down to maybe 2.7? How do you adjust as a Texas Tech offense to get your best playmaker the ball, and what does that look like in the passing game? Now, on the defensive side, it's got to be Steve Linton. And the reason being is this. Do I expect him to get 3 sacks every game? No, and neither should you. But I do expect him to set the edge alongside Miles Cole because that is going to be vital in terms of beating the Kansas State Wildcats for the sheer fact of this. Go look at what Will Howard did against Oklahoma State last weekend, albeit in a loss in Stillwater. He had a 70-yard touchdown run, right? He's got some wheels. He is an underrated athlete, Will Howard is. Now, if you allow him to get outside, that's where things get dangerous. If Texas Tech can continue to set the edge like they've done for the past 6 quarters at an elite level, that's really, really going to make Will Howard uncomfortable because you look at what Will Howard has done this year in the passing game. He's got 7 INTs to 9 touchdown passes, right? Kansas State, they've got a solid offensive line too, a couple of pros on there. Really, that's probably the strength of their team is the offensive line. You don't have to necessarily get to Will Howard in terms of sacking him, but make him feel that pressure and step up into the pocket where you've got guys like Tony Bradford, where you've got guys like Jalen Hutchings, Quincy Ledet Jr., right? Like you've got guys like that that can really impact and have those big bodies right in his face to make him uncomfortable and throw into tighter windows against the Texas Tech secondary that has looked phenomenal for a majority of the season. All right, speaking of Will Howard, he is definitely a player to watch. Listen, I am a Will Howard truther. I think he is a phenomenal quarterback, albeit he hasn't lived up to expectations this year. Let's just call a spade, right? You can really, if you're Texas Tech, make him uncomfortable, like I said, but he's going to take some chances. And if you're Texas Tech, you have to capitalize on those in terms of your secondary, right? You got a bunch of guys back there that are impact guys, whether that's Rabbit. You obviously got some really big-time playmakers on the outside in Williams and Dunlap. Not to mention you've also got C.J. Baskerville back there. You've got some freshmen rotating in there and Brendan Jordan as well, right? Like you've got some impact guys in that secondary. And in my opinion, the Texas Tech secondary is their best unit on the team, right? And so when you have guys back there that can make plays and capitalize when quarterbacks put themselves in a bad position, that's what Texas Tech is going to have to do on Saturday against a guy like Will Howard, who, again, will take chances. Don't get me wrong. Again, 7 INTs on the year. Texas Tech has to capitalize when Will Howard puts himself in danger with a tight window throw. All right, DJ Giddens out of the backfield, number 31. He leads the team in rushing with 488 yards and is averaging about 6 yards per carry. He's the guy to watch. Ward was the guy that transferred in there in terms of trying to replace Deuce Vaughn, which was never going to happen. Deuce Vaughn was sensational during his career at Kansas State, but Ward transferred in from Florida State. But now you've got Giddens back there, and it looks like he is taken over as the true RB1 for the Wildcats. Now, flipping over to the Wildcats defense, there's 2 guys you need to know, and the most important one is Austin Moore, the linebacker. He leads the team in tackles and is a true sideline-to-sideline guy, can impact in multiple facets of the game, whether that's dropping back into coverage, being a spy and really making the quarterback uncomfortable, or going downhill and impacting things in the run game. He really is a do-it-all linebacker and one of the best in the Big 12. He's number 41, Austin Moore. Now, when it comes to rushing the passer, Khalid Duke is the guy to watch. Now, his stats are kind of skewed. Let's be honest. He's got 4 sacks on the year, 2 of them against Troy, right? Okay, but he's a guy that you're still going to have to know if you're the Texas Tech tackles on the offensive line, in the sheer fact of he can impact a game just like Steve Linton can, in the sense of he doesn't get to the quarterback necessarily all the time, but he'll get a QB pressure and make the quarterback make a bad decision, right? So that's a guy that Caleb Rogers and even Monroe Mills on the left side is going to have to account for at all times off the edge for the Wildcats. All right, must-watch matchup in this one for me. It's got to be the Texas Tech offensive line against the Kansas State defensive line. And the reason being is this. Listen, simple and plain, this is a 180 type matchup that Texas Tech, off the offensive line anyway, is going from, right? You think about it. Last week, Baylor was dead last in the Big 12 when it came to rush yards allowed per game. Now you're facing the best run defense in the Big 12. Now, that's not all on the defensive line. That's also, on the secondary coming down, linebackers, whatever it may be for the Wildcats. But if you're Texas Tech, you have to win at the point of attack to keep Kansas State honest when it comes to the run game and actually get, Taj Brooks moving forward, which, again, Taj Brooks is pretty damn good at in terms of falling forward. But you have to at least get Taj to average in that 4 yards of carry range to keep things honest for the Kansas State defense, which will allow more open windows for Baron Morton in the passing game, which I think this is a game where Baron Morton has to show off that arm a little bit just because of this Kansas State defense. They are really, really good at stopping the run. Does Taj Brooks get to 5 100-yard rushing games in a row? TBD on that front. I think it's possible with the workload that he's getting, but it's not going to be because, hey, he's breaking off, 15, 20-yard runs all the time. It's going to be more of that, hey, he gets 25 carries and maybe gets to around 105, if that makes sense. But the Texas Tech offensive line absolutely is the most pivotal unit in this matchup for Texas Tech, in the sense of you have to keep the offense moving and win in the run game. All right, let's get to the odds in this one. And Texas Tech is favored by -1.5. The total over-under is set at 56.5. You can see my prediction right there at the bottom of the screen. I've got Texas Tech winning this one 33-26. And the reason being is this. Listen, again, I think Kansas State's a good football team. But moving forward, you may not win every game, right? If you're Texas Tech. That's just football. You have an identity. And I think that that's huge for Texas Tech, specifically at home, right? Again, the reason being is this. You play so much better at home if you're Texas Tech. I mean, it is night and day, right? You think about that Oregon game. You had 4 turnovers and were in it till the final minute against the team that, let's be honest, if they make the college football playoff, I know you're not surprised. I know I'm sure as hell not, right? So you think about what Texas Tech does in Lubbock, and it's at night. The crowd's going to be rowdy now that there's a 2-game winning streak going on, and Texas Tech has a chance to get a really big win moving forward, moving into 3-1 in Big 12 play. And they're all ahead of them, right? Like in terms of the results that they want still. There's a chance that they could make the Big 12 championship. Let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. But starting 3-1 in conference play puts you in a really good position if you're Texas Tech, looking at the schedule and how it divvies up in terms of who you play at home. Because I think looking at the schedule, Texas Tech should be favored in every home game they have remaining, including this one, which is sort of a pick 'em. Slight favorite Texas Tech is right now at the -1 with the total over under at 56.5. But there's my prediction. I think Texas Tech wins this one 33-26. I want to hear from y'all one more time, though. Who you got in this one? Leave your score prediction down on the pinned comment down below for the Kansas State Wildcats at the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Can Texas Tech get off the schneid and finally end their losing streak to the Wildcats? It'll be a big one and a blackout at the Jones. You know, as I said earlier, we know crazy things happen at Jones AT&T at night. I'm RC Maxfield reminding you one more time, be sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button to join the most engaging Texas Tech community here on YouTube and stay in the know all year long on Texas Tech football right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.